Let's set the meeting. Get our informers to find out where it's going to be held. Now, we insist it's a public place, a bar, a restaurant, someplace where there's people so I feel safe. They're going to search me when I first meet them, right? So I can't have a weapon on me then. But if Clemenza can figure a way to have a weapon planted there for me, then I'll kill them both.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where this week we are continuing our truly epic exploration of The Godfather. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello everyone, my name is John Roca. I'm a writer, producer, and host on The Outlaw Nation and a voiceover guy and a massive fan of both of these movies and certainly this movie that we're talking about today.
Do you feel that as the leader, one might say the Don, the Godfather of The Outlaw Nation, that you are building your own empire and trying to go into like a more, legitimate, is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say, although I would imagine I'd need to have, how can I say this? I need to have a stronger second in command. I need to have
need a concierge.
Yeah, I need a concierge. That's what I really need to take the outlaw. And I need to be a little less worrying about what the other guy is doing, a little more about worrying what I'm doing, and be a little more stronger about the things I need to do to take the channel to the next level. So yes, if I could be as cutthroat as Michael and emotionless as Michael, I think the channel would be even farther ahead, possibly.
Maybe you need to start making some people some offers they can't refuse.
Yeah, but the exchange is the reason people love the channel so much is because it's a very open, receptive, and warm and accepting channel. So that's
Absolutely.
The exchange. That's the exchange. So.
Well, I think that's, as we're going to get into, that's the balance that Michael keeps trying to strike in the course of this, series of films, and never quite makes it to be legitimate.
You're right. You're right, Steve. That scene in Godfather 2 where he breaks down in front of his mom and says, how come they love dad and they don't love me the same way they love dad? His inability to understand how his coldness alienates everyone around him.
It's what you just said just hit me. And of course, we're never going to get to the end of these films, but I never thought of Michael and related him to Charles Foster Kane until that moment that you just said that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Is that the inability to wanting to love and receive love, and what is missing in Michael's character, Yeah. Because part of it, like Charles Foster Kane, is he doesn't really have that much love to give.
Yeah, he doesn't know what the word means.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But right now we're still kind of romantic, because where we left off with The Godfather was Vito Corleone had just been shot. Fredo was weeping, looking down at his father's body, who at this point, if it's the first time we see the movie, might very well be dead. And we cut from that to among our most loving moments with Michael. They're outside Radio City Music Hall. They've just seen the Bells of St. Mary. He's with Kay, and they're having a flirtatious, joking thing that couples do.
Mike, would you like me better if I were a nun? Like in the story,
No.
Well, then would you like me better if I were Ingrid Bergman?
Now, that's a thought.
And then as they're joking, and I love the way Coppola shoots this, is they come across a newsstand, and the camera is behind the newsstand, and so they disappear for a moment. And when Kay pops out on the other side, we see that she has seen something. Yeah. And she says, Michael. And he comes back, and there is the newspaper that says Vito Corleone feared dead.
Pretty fast paper to come out as quickly as within an hour or 2 hours. Yeah.
I mean, I know they did have afternoon papers, but that is pretty... Well, and the whole feared dead is look, the guy's either dead or he's not.
Yeah.
It's like the newspaper would probably have an answer to that.
Right.
But we're going to suspend this time that he doesn't know. By the way, all these newspaper inserts shot by George Lucas.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Because he's down there helping Coppola out on all this stuff. And as we said, Michael looks through the paper, can't find out if he's dead or alive, and he looks around for a phone. The music is very heavy. And I love this thing that Coppola said as he was shooting this, or setting up to shoot. He's looking at they're on the location doing a scout, and he goes, I wish we had a phone booth here. It'd be so cool if Michael could just run across the street to the phone booth, and the art department said, "We can get you a phone booth." And it was just like this moment of going, "Oh, I'm making a movie for a studio.
Right.
They could get a phone booth."
Yeah. I don't have to shoot the location as is. I can add
As is.
stuff. Yeah, yeah.
So he runs across the street, calls in, and the first thing, and I think this is a great clue, talks to Sonny. The first thing Sonny says is, "Where have you been?"
Yeah.
Didn't Tom tell you I called?
Well, of course, Tom didn't tell him because Sollozzo's grabbed Tom.
Right, right.
And even Sonny doesn't know if he's alive or dead.
Yeah.
And now we're with Sonny, who is with his wife, and he hears some noises, and he grabs his gun because, I mean, the whole family could be about to be wiped out.
Yeah.
But it's Clemenza.
There's more news about your old man. The word is out on the street he's already dead.
What's the matter with you? Oh, I love how Sonny grabs him and throws him against the wall. And then Clemenza's like, "Calm down, Sonny, calm down." You know, but that's Sonny. That's Sonny. He is like, don't even joke about the death of my dad. Like, I don't care who you are. I don't care how much you've been devoted to this family. I'll knock your lights out. You know, and so that's Sonny to a T in that moment. You know,
And what I love too, that's a baby crying. Like this is a very lived in space. Like it isn't a cold space.
Right. Well, here's what's smart too, because the scene is, first of all, you go from Michael, who's in a tight phone booth, to Sonny, who's in a tight kitchen. So the tension is there, the feeling of being boxed in, the feeling of like fear for the first time in this swaggering family has entered it in quite some time that we're seeing on screen. And so like the fact he shoves Clemenza up there and all this stuff is going on, and Clemenza goes off. He says, "I don't care how sick he was. You get that guy, you get Paulie, you get back to the house, you know." So Paulie's a goner. And then you get the phone call. But once again, it's all this idea of being trapped, this idea of being in a box all of a sudden. It's so brilliant to shoot it that way. Coppola could have shot it in the bigger living room, in the bigger room in the house or whatever, but he shoots it in tight quarters in the kitchen. It's grimy, it's dirty, it's not as pretty to look at, and that's on purpose because the veneer of this luxurious life might be fading with the death of the Godfather.
Well, and I think Sonny's a man of action.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to wait. He wants to do stuff. And in our first scene with him being in charge, he's got to wait.
Yeah.
You know, he gets this call from Sollozzo. It's, you know, they have Tom Hagen. They got 3 hours. He has to write like, okay, 8:30 on the cabinet. Yeah. And then we cut to this very dark space, which was shot like in an abandoned diner in New York City. And there's Sollozzo and there's Tom.
Yeah.
And he says, "Your boss is dead."
Your boss is dead. I know you're not in the muscle end of the family, Tom, so I don't want you to be scared.
This scene doesn't get enough credit, Steve. Sollozzo, is it Nateri or Frank? What is his name? Al Nateri or something like that. He does such a great job in this scene as Sollozzo. You know, kind of letting Tom know, and he goes, "Oh yeah, you know, Sonny's going to come with all his guns and blah, blah." And he goes, "That'll be his first reaction, yeah. But I'm counting on you." So Sollozzo is so in control in this situation, and the actor who plays him does such a fantastic job of showing you how quickly all of a sudden he is the dominant and they are the submissive in this power dynamic, where he had come to them hat in hand for help. Now he's turned the tables, and in this scene it's shot so dark, very noir-ish, and I wonder if it's an homage to the noirs of the past. And you know, you have that, just the brim and then the fire lighting there. It's just brilliant the way it's done.
Well, it's funny. It came up like I think in our last conversation about how smart is Sollozzo, and I think I felt he was smarter, and you felt maybe it was more Barzini behind the whole thing.
Yeah,
but I think in this moment he's got some chess moves made in advance. And the other thing that I hadn't really thought about until watching it so much this time is how much time has passed between Vito saying, "I'm not going to do the deal with the drugs," and Vito getting shot.
Right. True.
It's the same day, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, because doesn't he call Luca Brasi in after the situation with Sollozzo and sends him down? Doesn't that how that works? Isn't that chronological?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's
a few days later, but
maybe it's
not too much.
Few days?
Yeah, not too much though.
The thing I think because this is really Barzini's plot. You know, he's the guy who's really behind this whole thing. He wants to get Vito Corleone, who's the top of the 5 families, he wants them out.
Yeah.
You know, and so I wonder if Sollozzo always knew that Vito was going to say no to the deal with the drugs.
Yeah.
And if this was always the plan,
Yeah.
you know? And the other, you say it's a great scene, which I totally agree. You got to watch Robert Duvall and how he takes this in. This is his father. He just said, your father's dead, basically.
So now it's up to you to make the peace between me and Sonny. Sonny was hot for my deal, wasn't he? And you knew it was the right thing to do.
Sonny will come after you with everything he's got.
Because he has Vito's calm in a lot of ways, in the same way that Michael does, you know, to be able to separate business and personal in his mind.
Yeah.
And then he says, I love this moment too. He says, let's face it, Tom, with all due respect, the Don was slipping.
The Don was slipping.
10
years ago, could I have gotten him?
Well, now he's dead. He's dead, Tom, and nothing can bring him back. So you got to talk to Sonny. You got to talk to the Cabo regimes, that Tessio, that fat Clemenza. It's good business, Tom.
Tom's response, again, this is so interesting. He says,
I'll try. But even Sonny won't be able to call off Luca Brasi.
You let me worry about Luca.
why does he not say that Luca's dead?
Oh, because you don't want to show your hand. You don't want to show. You want to leave them thinking they still have moves to make. And once they realize those moves are not there, it's an even greater victory. Because they turn around to go after to get Luca, and Luca's not around, which we'll see in a little bit. And that's the power play that he's doing here. You never reveal too much when you're in a position of power until it's over.
I don't like violence, Tom. I'm a businessman. Blood is a big expense.
He's great.
I love that. Yeah,
he's just great. And now we're out front, and it ends up we're sort of in a Christmas tree lot, and this is, real snow. It was really, really cold. The wind was really, really blowing, and this goes to this thing of Coppola loves weather, because the producers on the set said, oh, we got a storm. We're going to get insurance is going to give us money because we weren't able to shoot that day. Maybe we go to a cover set, and then we could shoot it how we want. And Coppola's like, no, let's go outside and shoot. Apparently, it was pretty brutal out there.
Yeah.
And that's when we find out that Vito is alive.
Yeah. He's still alive. 6 shots. We hit him with 6 shots. He's still alive. Well, that's bad luck for me. Bad luck for you if you don't make this deal. Oh, so good.
It's great.
And for the first time, and now the tables have turned again, Steve. The power dynamics shifts now. He's not dead. Sollozzo's not as strong as he thought he was. So now he comes back at Hagen with the kind of nervous anger. And so it's a desperate shot when he says, like, you better make this deal, and so now.
Well, because Sollozzo only has minutes now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we don't know how with it Vito's going to be.
Right.
And so if Vito can bring in all of his power, Sollozzo's screwed.
Yeah, exactly.
So if he can make this deal right away, Michael arrives back at the compound, but I think I've said this is all designed by Dean Tavoularis to look sort of like the Kennedy compound.
Yeah.
We see there's a chain across the gate. By the way, the big, heavy stone walls, styrofoam.
Your mother's over in the hospital with your father. Looks like he's going to pull through, thank God.
And now we're in this meeting.
Sollozzo's the key. You get rid of him, everything falls into line.
And this is the first time Michael is sort of in the space.
Yeah.
With talking about the family business.
Right. Because it's his father. If this had been business about anything else, anybody who wasn't a family member, Michael wouldn't be in the room. Michael wouldn't even been called.
Yeah. And the first thing they're worried about, as you said, is the word, where's Luca?
I know if Luca sold out, we're in a lot of trouble, believe me. A lot of trouble.
And then we asked Tom, what happens if the old man dies, God forbid? And Tom says, because he's going to lay out the business.
Yep.
If we lose the old man, we lose our political contacts and half our strength. The other New York families might wind up supporting Sollozzo just to avoid a long, destructive war. This is almost 1946. Nobody wants bloodshed anymore. If your father dies, you make the deal, Sonny.
It's easy for you to say, Tom. He's not your father.
And he shuts him down. He says to him, he's as much of a dad to me as he is to you. And to Sonny's credit, he goes, yeah, all right, fine. Good point.
Well, this is and we're going to see this several times, as the tension between Sonny and Tom.
Yep. They're the two older brothers.
Yeah. Well, and Tom's always going to be holding Sonny back.
Yeah.
He's the guy who's always saying no. And then Paulie comes in, coughing, because he's sick, John.
Sure it is.
He's really sick. He couldn't go to work.
You want me to hang around?
Yeah, hang around. You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
And Sonny is so nice to him.
Oh, of course.
Are you hungry or anything?
No, it's all right.
How about a drink? Have a little brandy. That's good to sweat it out. Huh?
All right, sure.
Go ahead, babe.
That might be a good idea.
Yeah, right.
If the Corleones, John, are ever really nice to you,
You're dead. You're dead.
you're dead.
Yeah, you're dead.
Because it's going to happen over and over
yeah.
again.
Yep, yep.
And the second he's out the door, Sonny says,
I want you to take care of that son of a bitch right away.
Paulie sold out the old man, that Strutz.
I don't want to see him again. Make that first thing on your list, understand?
Understood.
That's strunts.
one of the things that was really important to Coppola was accents. If you saw Italian Americans in a movie previous to The Godfather, they all spoke like this. You know, they had that
Right.
ridiculous Italian accent, partially because they weren't Italians.
Right.
And what Coppola said is that Santino's not going to have an Italian accent. He grew up in New York. He's going to have a New York accent. Yeah. And so you listen to the voices and you can hear the people who actually are from Italy and the people like Robert Duvall and James Caan and Al Pacino. They're New Yorkers and they speak like New Yorkers. And you can hear that throughout the film.
Hey, Mickey, tomorrow, you get a couple of guys, you go over to Lucas' apartment, hang around, wait for him to show up.
This is the first time that anybody even thinks of having Michael take an action as part of the family.
Yeah.
And Tom shuts it down.
Maybe we shouldn't get Mike mixed up in this too directly.
And I love James Caan's performance in this moment because you watch his face because he does accept that.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. It's a disappointment.
Listen, hang around the house on the phone and be a big help, huh?
He's not a, like I said, I think Vito is wrong later on in the film when he says, I never thought you were a bad concierge. I thought Sonny was a bad Don. Sonny's not a bad Don. What he is emotional. So yes, that could be bad, but the fact that he is surrounded by Tom Hagen, Michael, other people that could have corralled him had he survived, if he'd gotten a little bit older, that aggressive nature of his could have been shaved down to where it's a pinpoint, where it's a kind of sword that you could use when you need to use it. As he got older and he calmed down a little bit more, and let me tell you something from a person who has this experience, you kind of figure out where to exert your passion and where not to because it exhausts you. And so with Sonny, it's all over the place. But I don't think he's a bad dog because he does care for his brother. He does give, like if someone makes a good point, he's actually willing to listen. And so with that way, I think he's actually a little bit better than people give him credit for in the movie, in my opinion, and in the analysis of the movie. Sometimes think because he's a hothead that somehow he's wrong, but he doesn't go off just yelling at everybody and yelling whatever and doesn't listen to anybody. He does listen to people. When he loses it and gets himself killed at the toll booth, which we'll talk about later, that's because he loves his sister madly, and he's infuriated that this guy still wouldn't take the lesson and beat her as well as enough for her to call. Like the thing is, she didn't want to call. When she calls, that's as far. It's a terrible, terrible situation. But it's because it's out of love. It isn't from a desire to kill. It's out of love. You know.
Well, I think he does want to kill him.
Well,
That's
sure,
true.
but I mean, like, you know what I mean. It's driven.
Except,
by
I mean, I think it depends on what your standards are. Is he a bad Don compared to Tattaglia? Maybe not.
Tattaglia's a pimp, though, man.
Compared to Vito?
Right. Sure.
Because would Vito run off? Vito loves his daughter.
Right.
If he heard that, would he run off and do that? He would not.
You're right.
He said, because what Vito says in the scene later on with Mike is, I spent my whole life trying not to be careless.
Yeah. Right. And also,
Sonny is,
Oh, sorry, Steve. Go ahead.
Sonny is careless in that moment.
He is.
You know?
You're right. He is careless. He's also young.
Yeah.
And Vito's just born from a different cloth, and his experience is different. Whereas Sonny, his is a little more of a spoiled existence, so a little more of I'm owed all this stuff. So his reactions are a little different. And it's true.
I think Vito is a deep thinker and a strategic thinker.
Right.
And Sonny is a tactical thinker.
Right.
You know, not a deep thinker. And it was what just occurred to me as you were talking is like, I think Sonny is Patton. He's not Eisenhower.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you aim him at a target, he's great.
Oh yeah, right, exactly. So yeah.
But he couldn't handle the five families.
No.
You know.
He'd look for
Barzini
offense. He'd look for offense everywhere. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then we're still talking about what the hell happened to Luca, and in comes Tessio with a package. It's a fit. From my youngest memory of this movie, I've remembered this moment. He opens it up, fish wrapped in Luca's bulletproof vest. What does that mean?
That's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
How does Sonny not know what a Sicilian message is, right?
Exactly.
But it was, of course, to explain to the audience who's watching, who probably doesn't know what a Sicilian message is.
Precisely.
And boom. And it goes back to your earlier point in the first part, Steve, where you said, this is what you get when an authentic Italian-American makes this movie. These little moments that lend an undercurrent of authenticity throughout the movie. He knows he has to explain this inner workings of the mob or the mafia to the crowd that is watching this movie in 1972.
Right. It's the next day. Clemenza's leaving to go get in a car, and his wife says, "Don't forget the cannoli." And the only reason she says this is that Coppola wanted to make a moment out of it. And this is like a classic director thing, is like, give your bit player something interesting.
Yeah.
If she just says goodbye, that's not interesting. If she says, don't be late, and don't forget the cannoli, now we have a relationship between these people. That's the only reason he put this in.
We do. And I love the Ruth Buzzy outfit she has on. It's great.
Totally. And it's the same thing in the car with Paulie, is that they give him a reason to make him think he's okay.
Mm-hmm. That Sonny's running wild. He's thinking of going to the mattresses already. We got to find a spot over on the west side. You know any good spots on the west side?
Yeah, I think about it.
Well, think about it while you're driving, will you? I want to hit New York sometime this month.
But also, Paulie suspects something, which is why he has, Rocco move over to his right, so he thinks he might get garroted if he stays in the driver's area, and so makes him move over. And you're right, they joke with him, they talk about it, he says something about exterminate, we're going to be careful we don't exterminate you, like jokes all around.
Yep.
And then, we end up.
And then after a little drive through some stock footage, they end up at this field, and I love, maybe it's because I first saw this 4x3. I wonder if you can see the Statue of Liberty in the background in the 4x3 version.
Oh, good point. I don't know.
Because that's such a great setting.
Yeah, it
with
is.
Like this field, and the only thing, we have this immigrant story and the story about America, and there's the Statue of Liberty in the background. Clemenza says, I need to take a leak. Steps out, walks away. They were in a wide shot.
Yeah.
Clemenza zips up, and then we get the line.
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
Take the cannoli. Oof.
Which is improvised.
Oh, really?
Yep. Yeah, Clemenza came up with that.
Nice.
And he wouldn't have come up with it if Coppola hadn't given the "don't forget the cannoli" to the wife. And this is why, and particularly when you're talking about Coppola, you have to push back against the genius director who has everything in their brain and has the whole movie planned out. You can't plan that out.
Yeah.
It's a thing, just like you can't plan out the weather, you can't plan out all these things.
Yeah.
And that's some of the best stuff that comes up in the movie.
What you hope is you create an environment where stuff like that can happen, that you're creating such an environment where greatness can come out of in a collaborative effort. Yeah.
Small detail, but I find it interesting, is if you look at the car, in the windshield, on the bottom left corner of the windshield is the letter A. Because that is its gas rationing number letter from World War II.
Oh, wow. How interesting.
It's totally interesting. And again, this was a Coppola thing that he insisted they figure it out and put it on that. And again, it's like, will anyone notice that? Few people.
Yeah.
But it's one more little detail. I love the next shot, which is that Mike is sitting on a bench alone outside in the cold in his coat because he looks so young. He looks like a kid, because this is the moment before that he's going to change. And I think he's already thinking about it.
Yeah.
I think if Tom hadn't said anything, he might have gone with a couple of guys over to Luca's place.
Maybe even gotten killed. I
think it's in his head.
Right? Because Sollozzo would have been there waiting for whoever was checking in on Luca, probably. Sollozzo's men, at least. That's why it's very similar, this film, to like Excalibur. The difference is, as you see the young Michael, like you see the young Arthur, and it's the same actor. And as the film goes on, obviously we don't see Michael with the gray hair or anything like we do at the end of Excalibur, but we see this progression of the young man into embracing his power and the steps that lead to that happening, and the tragedy that leads to that happening, that hardens him and gives him perspective, and it turns him into the leader that he becomes. But you're right. In that moment, he looks like a kid sitting, like he's probably sat there before in the past as a kid. Maybe he's done stuff wrong or felt out of place with, maybe he got into a fight with his brother, you know, and goes out and sits there by himself to kind of like process the feelings or whatever. So I would not be surprised that that's in Al Pacino's head. That's a place he's gone to multiple times as a younger kid or teenager or whatever to kind of think things through.
I think that's a great point. I hadn't thought about it, but you suddenly made me go, well, what was Michael Corleone like as a kid?
Yeah.
I think he was quiet and aloof.
Very much.
It wasn't easy for him to make friendships or relationships. I bet you're totally right. I think he spent a lot of time on that bench.
He has no friends, Steve, in the movie at all. It's his brothers and Kay. That's it. You know,
and his father.
Right. But it's Sorry, his family and Kay. That's it. There are no friends. He didn't call him Joe or something like that. It's completely on his own.
Well, and the relationship with Kay, which we're going to see in this next moment, is like, it's odd.
Yeah, it is odd.
You know, it's not sweet and loving. We have some sweet moments with them, but right now he comes in because there's a phone call from Kay and he's on the phone, and this is just so great. She says, "I love you," and he goes,
Well, aren't you going to say it back?
Yeah, I can't talk. Yeah, I'll see you tonight.
And then he hangs up, and I love Clemenza.
Hey, Mikey, why don't you tell that nice girl you love her? I love you with all of my heart. If I don't see you again soon, I'm gonna die.
If I don't see you, I'm gonna die.
One of the things in Coppola's big notebook is that Clemenza needs to be an uncle, a real loving uncle for Michael. He has to really care about him. You totally see it in this scene. This is, by the way, where we get the gangsters don't brown garlic, they fry garlic, which is that Coppola story I literally heard 5 times. Here's the thing that I think is funny as he makes the recipe for tomato sauce is Coppola said, I think all of my movies should have a good recipe in it. So at least if the movie turns out bad, people at least can make a good meal. Which I'm trying to go like, is there a good recipe in Apocalypse Now?
I don't know.
I don't remember one. They cut up that cow.
That's true. Recipe for danger, that's for sure.
Where you going?
To the city.
Oh, well, send some bodyguards with him, all right?
No, I'm just going to the hospital.
Never mind.
To see
Send
Pop.
somebody with him.
Oh, he'll be all right. Solos knows he's a civilian.
And then I love Michael starts to go, and Sonny goes, send somebody anyway. Cut to Michael in the car with some guys. And then we're in a hotel room, and this dinner with Kay is so weird.
It is. Her hair is weird. Like, her hair is very much like 50s politician's wife hair, even though I know this is the 40s, but it's like pushed back. It's very almost mother looking. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's
severe and well, and it's interesting. So Coppola had Al Pacino and Diane Keaton. He had them stay in this hotel room and order rooms. He said, order whatever you want, have a date.
Yeah.
And apparently, I think they were dating. They actually started dating at some point during this movie.
Yeah.
And there's little details like that, you know, they're eating room service, but Michael is sitting on the bed, you know, because they just had sex.
Yeah.
And the scene is so quiet and so strained isn't the right word, but there's a lot of stuff. And this is where this is how I felt watching it this time. Is I went, I think Michael's already decided.
Yeah.
I think he's real close to deciding, and he knows his relationship with Kay might be over.
Yeah.
At this moment.
He's distant. He's already preparing himself for the break that's coming.
Because she says, when will I see you again, Michael? And he says, I don't know.
That's the key right there.
Because, of course, what happens at the hospital is the transition.
Yep.
And then what happens at the restaurant is also a transition.
Yep.
But if what happened at the hospital didn't happen, I think he might still have gone.
Oh, you do? Okay.
That's where, because when am I going to see you again? I don't know.
Right. I take I don't know as he's still considering his options.
Yes.
So he's not sure. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. That's what I say. He might still have done it.
True.
Even
might
without
still have
that.
Done it. Yeah.
We're at the hospital. This might be my favorite sequence in the movie.
Uh-huh.
I just love everything about the way it's constructed. He pulls up, and first, it's just the empty halls. Nobody's there. And we see, like, the half of a sandwich, the empty chairs, the empty nurse's station, like all of this, and the music, and it's sort of building the tension, and the music is building and building until Michael's running down the hall and goes past where the guard station is and gets to his father's door. And you can see that moment. He's afraid to open that door because his dad could be dead already.
Yeah.
And there's his dad alone in the bed. And the way it's framed, by the way, what I was thinking about, it's very similar to the final shot. It's through that doorway that we're seeing this space.
Good point.
And then the nurse comes up, and it's scary when she shows up.
What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here now.
I'm Michael Corleone. This is my father. There's nobody here. What happened to the guards?
Your father just had too many visitors. They interfered with hospital service. The police made them leave about 10 minutes ago.
10 minutes.
Yep.
And he calls home.
Sonny, Michael, I'm at the hospital. Listen, I got here late. There's nobody here. Nobody. No Tessio's men, no detectives, nobody. Papa's all alone.
And this moment is great.
I won't panic.
That's the brother to little brother thing, yeah.
Well, and it's also, he's not going to panic.
Right.
And you could see the wheels turn as he comes up with the plan. And the first part of the plan is we're going to move him to another room.
Right.
That's out of the question.
You know my father. Men are coming here to kill him. You understand? Now help me, please.
And we see them from below moving the bed with the IV, and then you start to hear noises, footsteps, something coming. And we have shots of the empty hallways as we're hearing the footsteps get louder and louder and the tension's building. Here's something interesting about filmmaking. When you go to shoot a scene, usually you make a shot list. So you go like, okay, I need to shoot the close up here and an insert here and a wide shot. Now, these are all the things I need to get.
Right.
And then you step by step go through the shot list. And frequently there is something in the shot list, particularly as I work with student filmmakers, that you forget, that you just didn't put in the shot list because you're focusing on the important stuff when the important stuff is your characters.
Right.
Coppola didn't shoot any empty hallways because he shot Michael and he shot Vito and he shot Enzo showing up, but he didn't shoot empty hallways because he didn't think about it.
Right.
And then suddenly they're in post going, oh, to build this tension, we need to hear the footsteps and we need to see empty hallways. But they couldn't find any. He'd never shot it. So you know what they did? Call up our good friend George Lucas. George, go through all the heads and tails of everything we shot in the hospital and see if you can find a moment before the actor stepped into frame.
Yeah.
You know, so Michael's about to turn a corner into the hallway, and so you have 50 frames of empty hallway after they pulled the slate out, and that is what we got. That's how we made that sequence work.
Wow.
Yeah. And it happens all the time because, like, why would you think about shooting nothing? You're so busy to get everything you got to get shot.
Yeah.
And then here comes this guy up the stairs, and at first it's like, this guy's obviously a killer.
Yeah.
It's Enzo, the baker.
Who are you? I am Enzo, the baker.
I love Enzo. I love.
If there is trouble, I stay here to help you. For your father.
Which, of course, is tying back what happened earlier in the wedding, right? Because it was him that a homie was lobbying for to stay in the country, and he ends up paying dividends.
He would have lost everything. He had been sent back to Italy, wouldn't be married, wouldn't have a career, wouldn't be in America. So, you know, Vito literally saved his life on some level.
Wouldn't be in Godfather Part 3. Yeah.
Wait for me outside in front of the hospital. All right? I'll be out in a minute. Go ahead. Okay.
And then this moment, man, leans into Dad. You see that eye open, that Vito is awake, and he says,
I hear, Bob. Take care of you now. I'm with you now. I'm with you.
That's the moment. That's when he's finally decided. You know, Steve Human talked about it. He's been on the fence and figuring it out and thinking about it. This is the moment. I'm with you is purposeful in the dialogue of this movie. And in that moment, he is saying, I've made my decision to join the family in the family business. Yeah.
It's so funny because Brando, we know him as an actor that's so big. And I think what he does in this scene is so amazing. Just because he is happy because his son is saying he loves him on some level. And it is exactly what he didn't want.
Yep.
You know, you see all that. By the way, Al Pacino twisted his ankle during this shoot and had to go to the hospital. And so it put them behind schedule. And this was one more reason that the studio wanted to fire Coppola. They're like, oh, you're behind schedule. He's like, my actor is in the hospital, you know? And that also meant is they weren't able to shoot the whole sequence. So when you're seeing close-ups, this is shot in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
All the close-ups, and when Tom shows up with Clemenza, that's shot in Los Angeles. The wide shots are all shot in New York. Everything, the way this is done, is so great. Michael comes out, tosses Enzo's flowers away.
Get rid of these. Come here. Put your hand in your pocket like you have a gun. You'll be all right.
And Michael, man, ice cold.
Ice cold. Well, because he's a soldier.
Yeah.
He's been in a war or in a battle or close quarters before, so he knows what to do in this moment.
You know what I never looked at? Did you see what his rank was?
No, I never did look at what his rank was.
I'm curious if he was an officer.
I think he was an officer, certainly, because he's wearing dress greens. Those are officer greens that he was wearing when he showed up at the wedding.
They are. Because he's a Marine, right?
Yeah.
And then this car pulls up, and the music is ominous, and this is the moment. Michael looks, and then I love the unbuttoning of the jacket and him just reaching his hand in.
Right.
That is amazing. Yeah. And the car pulls away.
You did good.
Enzo pulls out that cigarette and can't light it.
Yeah. The shaking.
Michael takes the lighter. And what's so interesting is it's not just that he lights the cigarette, but he lights the cigarette and looks at his hands.
Yeah.
And sees that his hands are steady as a rock.
Yeah.
What Coppola says about this moment, he says, as a director, you're always trying to find ways to make the audience understand what the character is feeling. This is classic show don't tell. Him looking at his hands and seeing that they're steady right after he told his dad, I'm with you. That's him.
Yeah.
Oh, this is who I am, you know, on some level. Yeah. And now the police show up. And the great Sterling Hayden. Complete with what do they call those things when they bring in sound from another sound? One of those, like, they bring one of those sounds that are not actually from the film you're shooting. One of those stock sounds of the car braking. You can hear that. Yeah, totally. Sterling Hayden comes out. The great Sterling Hayden. Yeah.
I thought I got all you guinea hoods locked up. What the hell are you doing here?
He is probably the actor who was almost cast in more Cine-Files movies because he was almost in Jaws, and he was. There's so many times where it's like, well, I think it was maybe Dirty Dozen instead of Lee Marvin. Oh, wow. Like there were so many times where it's like Sterling Hayden was almost the guy, but then wasn't the guy. But here he is the guy. He's fantastic in his gruff, racist, tough guy way. Yeah. And Michael, totally fearless, says,
what happened to the men who were guarding my father, Captain?
Why, you little punk. What the hell are you doing telling me my business? I pulled them guys off of here, eh? Now you get out of here and stay away from this hospital.
I'm not moving until you put some guards around my father's room.
Phil, take him in.
And someone in the background says, the kid's clean. He's a war hero. Yeah. I had no idea who that is.
Yeah, it's just one of the cops, right? Who is it?
Sonny Grasso, the real guy who wrote The French Connection, the guy, Roy Scheider's character, that's him. And it's like the year after The French Connection was made. Isn't that crazy?
Authenticity, man.
Totally.
What's the Turk paying you to set up my father, Captain?
Take a hold of him.
And he gives a huge punch, and Michael just goes down.
It's a strong punch, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, once again, watching it now in 2020, Steve, a corrupt cop, a corrupt police officer selling himself out, making money on the side, hiring other police officers to enact this corruption against a son of immigrants, against an immigrant who's come to make his way in the world. There's a lot of levels looking at this now in 2020 in this moment, and of course later on when Michael is lobbying for the papers to go after this police captain for what he did, those moments kind of resonate harder for me than they have before. A lot of people are taking a look at films that glorify police or that have police as the central roles and kind of having second looks at them. I'm not agreeing that people need to, but certainly watching this film I felt it as I was watching the scene with McCluskey. It carried more weight this time around than it has in the past.
Two things about this. There's something, this is unrelated mostly to The Godfather, but it's something that occurred to me as we did, because we did The Untouchables, and then we did Mississippi Burning. And something occurred to me then that relates to what you were just saying that I don't think I ever said, is in both of those movies, there's the tough older guy who convinces the by-the-book guy to move outside the rules of the law and beat up suspects and do what is never necessary to get the bad guy. And I went, how often in movies have we told the opposite story of the by-the-book guy reining in the person going outside the lines in order to do things the right way? And how much problem because the narrative is always, look, cops got to do what cops got to do in order to get the job done. And I'm sort of thinking about today, like, well, which one is worse? You know, not going outside the law to get this bad guy, or sometimes going outside the law in the ways that maybe we shouldn't. That's not really related to The Godfather. What is related to The Godfather that also came up in Untouchables is the tension between the Irish-American community and the Italian-American community.
Good point,
And there's this weird thing in America where, because, and this also is something came up in the Untouchables, is the Irish and the Italians in the 30s and 40s and even 50s were not white in the way that we conceive of them today. You know, that they were treated as a different race, and there was, you know, no Irish allowed, no Italian allowed, weren't allowed to have, you didn't want to marry your kids, you know, all these racial stereotypes. And there's this thing that always happens, which is like one oppressed group is against the other oppressed group. You know, the Irish came to America a little bit earlier than the Italians, and it established themselves as police and as mayors. And so they're keeping down the next generation of immigrants, which is the Italian immigrants. You know, and that's something that happens in America over and over again.
Agreed.
I'm the attorney for the Corleone family. These men are private detectives hired to protect Vito Corleone. They're licensed to carry firearms. If you interfere, you'll have to appear before a judge in the morning and show cause.
We're back to the compound. And Michael gets out of the car, sees all the guys with guns.
What's with all the new faces?
We don't need them now. After the hospital thing, Sonny got mad. We hit Bruno Titalia 4 o'clock this morning.
So now we're in a war.
And I wonder if there's a missing scene between Tom and Sonny, where he tried to talk him out of hitting Bruno Titalia, and Sonny was like, yeah, totally, no, you're right, I shouldn't do it, you're right, and then sends guys to do it or does it himself. That's certainly possible.
And I'm sure he was out with the guys doing it.
Yes, I'm sure you're right, because he goes out to go have sex with the guys. Why wouldn't he go out to kill somebody with the guys? Why wouldn't he?
Sonny's not having sex with the guys.
You know what I'm saying? He goes out with the guys, and then he has sex, is what I'm saying.
Yes. Watch James Caan's performance when we come in. He is glowing.
Hey, listen to this. The Turk, he wants to talk. He got you, imagine the nerve on this son of a bitch, eh? Craps out last night, he wants a meeting today. What'd he say? What did he say? Bada-beep, bada-bap, bada-boop, bada-beep. He wants us to send Michael to hear the proposition. And the promise is that the deal is so good that we can't refuse, eh?
There's so much energy there.
He feels like he's taken the power back from the fear that he had been feeling earlier,
Well, you know what he's like? And this goes back to, like, is he a good Don or is he not? He's the captain of the football team. You know what I mean? But he's not the coach.
No.
Like, when he's out on the field, he's in his element. Right now, in battle, he's feeling great.
Yeah. Like Patton.
You know?
Like you said,
like Patton. Yeah. By the way, James Caan, so Coppola made it a rule, I'm not going to meet with any mobsters. I don't want any, I'm making a movie, I'm totally separate. James Caan, he found some tough guys and spent a lot of time with them.
As Sonny would. Would.
Well, it's funny going like, you know, James Caan is a tough Jew.
Yeah, he is.
He is a tough guy. And so hanging out with tough Sicilians, it was all right.
Yeah.
You give him one message, I want Solanzo. If not, it's all out war. We go to the
Some of the other families won't sit still.
They hand me Solanzo.
Your father would want to hear this. This is business, not personal.
They shot my father.
Even the shooting of your father was business, not personal, Sonny.
Well, then business will have to suffer, all right? Hey, listen, do me a favor, Tom. No more advice on how to patch things up. Just help me win, please, all right?
And Tom talks about the McCluskey, the cop.
Now, nobody has ever gunned down a New York police captain, never.
This is where, by the way, you see the full Duvall. This is like the guy you're going to see later in Network and Apocalypse Now and Great Santini, the big...
All the 5 families would come after you, Sonny. The Corleone family would be outcast. Even the old man's political protection would run for cover.
And Sonny goes, okay, we'll wait.
Yeah.
And this whole time, Michael's been sitting in the chair, quietly. Mm-hmm. Al Pacino, it's so funny for this guy that's such a grandiose actor later in his career.
Yeah.
The quietness of his power, which you see in this scene, is so strong.
Yeah.
You can't wait. Can't wait.
Sollozzo's going to kill Pop. That's it.
He's sitting in the chair, and the camera does this very slow push in on Michael as he says,
They want to have a meeting with me, right? It will be me, McCluskey, and Sollozzo. Let's set the meeting. Get our informers to find out where it's going to be held. Now, we insist it's a public place, a bar, a restaurant, someplace where there's people, so I feel safe.
I love that he says, so I feel safe.
Yeah.
That's a key to the manipulation. Yeah. And by the way, so the camera's doing this real slow push in. Gordon Willis did not want to do this push in because it was, again, it's breaking the rules. We were going to have all these static shots. And I think it's because we haven't done a push in like this very much that it has its power.
Yeah.
And Michael goes on. He's figured out the whole plan. He says,
You're going to search me when I first meet them, right? So I can't have a weapon on me then. But if Clemenza can figure a way to have a weapon planted there for me, then I'll kill them both.
And the reaction? Everyone bursts out laughing. And Sonny in particular says,
What are you going to do? Nice college boy, huh? Didn't want to get mixed up in the family business? Huh? Now you want to gun down a police captain? Why, because he slapped you in the face a little bit? Huh? What do you think, this is the army where you shoot him a mile away? You got to get up close like this, and bada bing, you blow their brains all over your nice Ivy League suit.
Watch Al Pacino as James Caan comes at him with this. And he sort of does this little hand gesture, like, just stay away from me.
Yeah, don't hit me. This has been their relationship, Steve. He is, Sonny is the braggadocio, aggressive, pushy older brother who's very passionate. Michael is the quiet, introspective, who's had to deal with a brother like this. So when Sonny comes to him, he instinctively puts up his hand like this, as I'm sure, I know it's a podcast, but he essentially puts up his hand in front of his face because he's shielding himself from Sonny in case Sonny slaps him or does something that maybe he's done in the past in their relationship, trying to accentuate a point at Mike's physical expense.
It's funny because I have never interpreted it as he's worried about him physically, although that's perfectly reasonable, totally makes sense, particularly because he's got a broken jaw.
Right.
And by the way, they literally did wire Al Pacino's jaw shut.
Oh, fuck.
So he really can't open his mouth.
Oh, no thanks, man. No thanks.
Yeah.
That's too far.
I've always interpreted it as more like emotions are very high, and he's like, don't come this close to me. Like, give me some space. But of course, your interpretation is perfectly, totally could be correct. Here's what's interesting. This is not Sonny's reaction in the book. So in the book, everyone laughs except Sonny. Because Sonny has always been waiting. He always knew there was going to be a day where the real Michael would come out, because he knew, even though he was the youngest kid and the smallest kid, that he never quit a fight. Like, once you had Michael against you, he would never quit. And he knew the steel that his brother Michael had. So he expected this and goes, oh shit, Michael's in.
Yeah.
That's his reaction in the book. And it's just such and that's a perfectly good story point.
Yeah.
And Coppola goes to the opposite, which I think is more filmic.
Yes.
Everyone laughs.
And then he starts to go on this thing about how McCluskey, he goes to Tom. He says, the McCluskey is a dirty cop. He's involved with the drug rackets and all this kind of stuff. We have people on the payroll who work in the papers. They'd love a story like that. And Tom, to his credit, says, they might. They just might. He almost says it like with reverence, with respect for him, which I love that moment.
Because this ends with, as Tom sort of comes over to it, and Al turns to James Caan and says,
It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business.
In that moment is the change in the relationship between him and Sonny.
Yeah.
He just stares at him with those cold eyes. It's really powerful, stating his case.
Well, and this is why this is such a great film. Because you watch Al Pacino, the evolution of his character, step by step. In this moment of, it's not personal, it's strictly business.
Yeah.
That's a huge change. And we cut to a gun being lowered into frame.
It's as cold as they come. Impossible to trace, so you don't worry about prints, Mike.
I love the set, by the way, that they're in. They're just in like a tiny little basement.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? And then he says, okay, now he's going over the plan. What do you do next? Oh, I sit down and finish my dinner. And this is the detail.
Just let your hand drop to your side and let the gun slip out.
Now, I don't know why it's so important that he leaves the gun. But filmically, it's great because what Coppola said, I think I said it in the last part, he always wants a detail of a death.
Right.
Leave the cannoli or leave the gun, take the cannoli. The knife in the hand and the dark face of Luca Brasi. Here, they say this multiple times, drop the gun.
Yeah. And
what Coppola has done by doing this is he's making you, the audience, think about it. So when he does the murder, you're going, is he going to drop the gun? I love Clemenza's description of what he should do.
So walk out of the place real fast, but you don't run. Don't look nobody directly in the eye, but you don't look away either.
Yeah. That's okay. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
And then you take a long vacation and we catch hell.
Yeah. These things got to happen every few years. It's been like 10 years since we had one. It gets rid of the bad blood. It resets everything. Yeah.
It's like, okay. We're eating Chinese food.
Yeah.
This is another Coppola detail that, again, a Jewish director would never have the Italians eating Chinese food out of boxes. But Coppola, who grew up in New York with Italians, knows that they love Chinese food. Yeah. And, of course, he had to make sure that the boxes were exactly the right boxes they would have had in 1946.
Of course he does.
Louis' Restaurant in the Bronx. Anybody know this joint?
Yeah, sure, I do. It's perfect for us.
They got an old-fashioned toilet in the box and the chain thing, and we might be able to tape a gun behind it.
Yeah.
And then Clemenza gives the plan. It's like, all right.
You go to a restaurant, you eat, you talk for a while, you relax. You make them relax. Then you get up and you go take a leak. Or better still, you ask for permission to go. Then when you come back, you come out blasting. And don't take any chances. 2 shots in the head apiece.
Hey, listen. I want somebody good, and I mean very good, to plant that gun. I don't want my brother coming out of that toilet with just his dick in his hands, all right?
Fair.
It's all so great. And as Michael's leaving, Sonny hits it. We're going to hit this detail again. He tell you to drop the gun? Yeah, 1,000,000 times.
Yeah.
Watch how these guys say goodbye to each other.
Yeah. It's real.
Sonny and and tender.
Yeah.
The hug, kiss.
I love it, and because you get it's the last moment with him and Sonny.
Yeah.
And you don't know it as you're watching the movie, right? It's the last moment with him and Sonny, but there's a weight to it and a power to it. And I wonder. Yeah, I mean it's yeah. Anyway, I just wonder about it, and
what do you wonder about?
If
Clearly
he maybe I wondered if maybe he, like in the character of Michael, maybe Pacino threw in a level, because I've always wondered this as I watched the scene, threw in a level of like, he knew Sonny was going to die. Like maybe he knew, like if this goes off, and he also didn't know if he was going to die. Do you know what I'm saying? So this hug carries so much more extra weight, because they know if he survives, he's gone to Italy. And if he doesn't, if it doesn't go well, he's going to get killed. So he's essentially saying goodbye to his brother, right? One way or another. And it's a life and death goodbye. It isn't like, I'm off to a vacation for a couple of months, I'll see you in a little bit, right? I'll miss you till then. This is more of like there's more weight to the goodbye, because anything can happen. And maybe, just maybe, underneath it all is Michael thinking, well, even if I do survive, I just know Sonny's going to find a way to get himself killed because he's too emotional. It's not the right. See, he can't do it, And I just wonder about it when I watched it this time, like how much is possibly there.
There's certainly a lot there. I mean, it's certain. I think that's a perfectly that because I think this is the last tender moment,
between them,
between the family,
between them.
Well, and it's so funny because So if you think about one of the things I've thought about a lot is like you think about the 80s movie and the perfectly structured Back to the Future, Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is what the movie's about, beginning, middle, and end.
Right.
All the, everything wrapped up in a bow. And those are great. And I love movies like that.
Yep.
70s movies aren't like that. 70s movies are, you're just having this experience.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting, I think The Godfather might be the best example of a movie that is a 70s film and it doesn't drift, but it doesn't telegraph anything.
Right.
And yet the more you analyze it, the more perfectly structured it is.
Yep.
And because this is a movie about a family falling apart in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And it is a movie that starts with the closest moment of the family at a wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also a movie about a person in Al Pacino's character who doesn't want to be part of the family, who becomes the center of the family.
Right.
He says at the beginning, "That's my family, that's not me."
Right.
And the more Michael, who's most separate from the family at the most together moment of the family at the wedding, the more he moves into the center of the family, the more the love that we saw at the beginning ceases to exist.
Yeah.
And so structurally it's really all there. And that's why this moment is so tender.
Yeah.
Is that other than Apollina, this is the last tender moment we see for Michael in the film.
Yeah.
Or in his life.
Right. It's only Apollonia is the last moment. When she explodes in the car, that's the end of any kind of emotion Michael has, except for his father. Right.
He's waiting in front of Dempsey's. The car comes and picks him up. He's in the front seat. Salazzo's in there. He says,
"I'm glad you came, Mike. I hope we can straighten everything out."
And I love how Al Pacino plays this, or Michael plays this.
"I want to straighten everything out tonight. I don't want my father bothered anymore."
And McCloskey goes, "He's a good kid. Sorry about the other night." And then I love how he frisks him from behind.
Yeah.
He says,
"First 1,000 young punks."
He's great. And we're driving. This is all poor man's process, by the way, which is we said many times. We're just in a dark room, bouncing some lights, and someone bouncing the car a little bit to make it shake. And the car pulls onto the bridge, and we're in Michael's POV, and the sign says, "To New Jersey."
"We're going to Jersey?"
And Salazzo says,
"Maybe."
Because the restaurant's supposed to be in the Bronx.
Right.
The whole plan is dependent upon going to the Bronx.
Right.
And the tension is building, and then just at the last moment, this car does a U-turn on the bridge, pulls off the bridge, and now heads to the Bronx.
Right. I do want to point something out here, Steve, in this scene. This is Michael becoming a gangster once and for all, right? And I'll tell you what, the way they shoot it, the correcting of the hat, he looks almost like Edward G. Robinson,
sure,
in Little Caesar. Like he is, he's got the jacket on, he's got the hat, he's adjusting the hat, he's cutting his hair. Like this isn't the military guy we saw at the beginning of the movie. This isn't the kid sitting on the bench anymore. No. This is Michael going into battle, putting on his uniform, putting on his camos, putting on his, he's coming in, his weapon's going to be waiting for him when he gets to that restaurant for the essentially hand-to-hand combat. And so it's like, this is what I see in this sequence, is him assuming the role of the gangster once and for all. And the hat is just so essential to me, and the way that Coppola puts it in frame, that he corrects it and what have you. It's, he's putting on a whole new uniform for a new war, basically.
Totally. Absolutely. And we're now going to the Battleground because we're at Louis' restaurant. And I think, as I said before, in Coppola's giant notebook, this is the scene with the most notes. And one of the things he always had was pitfalls. Pitfall for this scene is rushing it.
Yeah.
Don't go too fast.
Right.
And we're quiet because we can't speak while the waiter's around who delivers some wine. Mm-hmm. I love that Sterling Hayden says,
"How's the Italian food in this restaurant?"
There's something about asking how's the Italian. It's like, John, I take you to a Vietnamese restaurant and you say, "How's the Vietnamese food in this restaurant?" It's like, you could just say, "How's the food?"
Yeah, right. But he's a racist, so why would he?
I know. But apparently the veal is the best in the city. And Michael's just staring at him, and man, the danger in his eyes at this moment.
Yeah.
And again, long pause while the wine gets uncorked, and we hand Michael a glass. And
I'm gonna speak Italian to Mike.
Go ahead.
What's interesting in this movie is there are a bunch of times where we subtitle the Italian.
Mm-hmm.
And in this scene, we don't.
Right. This is what that struck me this time as well, that they don't. I mean, you get what there's, and maybe because I speak Spanish, I can some of the words are similar to Italian. So I've always gotten what the point of the scene was and what he's trying to say. But I wonder for people who don't speak any foreign language, if they understand the points that Sollozzo is making.
I think I took Spanish in high school. I do not speak Spanish, but I know some Spanish vocabulary. Yeah. But I think they somehow wrote this in a way that is using specific Italian words that are so recognizable, padre. He says, tu padre, and antique, it's like, I know what your father's old fashioned.
Yeah. Right. That's a good point.
I'm just hearing little words that make it make sense. We hear that, because he says,
Io hai un grosso rispetto per tuo padre.
It's like, you respect your father a lot. Like, I'm getting what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And the choice to not subtitle is sort of fascinating.
Yeah.
And then the waiter comes, and again, we go silent, and we cut to this high angle shot. Gordon Willis didn't want to shoot a high angle. He's breaking the rules. And Coppola's reason was, look, Dean Tavoularis put a lot of time ripping out the old linoleum floor and putting this tile floor in. We need to shoot it. And there's this moment where Michael is struggling for his words and says, "Como se dice?" And then says, and you could see the intensity, and his jaw is really wired shut and trying to speak through it. It says, "What I want."
What I want, what's most important to me, is that I have a guarantee. No more attempts on my father's life.
What guarantees can I give you, Mike? I'm the hunted one. I missed my chance. You think too much of me, kid. I'm not that clever.
Here's the thing I was thinking. If Sollozzo had made some kind of guarantee, would Michael still have killed him?
No. Yes. I think Michael still would have killed him because Michael says it in the room. We can't wait. Sollozzo's going to kill Pop. That's it. So he knows that no matter what guarantees get given here, he doesn't trust Sollozzo. The U-turn that he does there, the way he's played this whole thing, even attempting to kill his dad, like Michael would never have trusted Sollozzo in the long run. I do think Tom is wrong. I think Tom wanting to make the deal, wanting peace. Sometimes just because you're the most level-headed person in the room doesn't mean you're making the right decision. And I think Tom is wrong to want to negotiate with Sollozzo. I think to hand over the stuff that they want to hand over at Sollozzo's request, and of course behind the scenes Barzini's request, would have crippled the family at that time. And so what is going on here, I think Michael knows he's got to get rid of Sollozzo so they can reclaim top dog status amongst the five families again in New York. So I don't think in any way possible, no matter what Sollozzo said, Michael was going to believe him. He was going to kill him one way or another because he believed Sollozzo would kill his dad no matter what. No matter what.
That's what I thought in the past. And watching it this time, I think Michael is going to kill him no matter what.
Yeah.
But I think he didn't 100% know he was going to do it until the answer to this question, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Is that if Sollozzo had come up with some plan that Michael felt comfortable, I think he might not have.
Okay.
I don't think that it was possible for Sollozzo to say anything at this moment that would have done that.
Right.
The other thing I think is that Tom is not a genius. You know what I mean?
Right.
Vito is a genius. Michael is a genius.
Right.
Tom is a very practical, straightforward, calm businessman.
Yes.
Like, this is what has to be done. I think Vito would have made the deal.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that Vito wasn't going to kill Barzini and Sollozzo down the road. Vito is okay, strange analogy. Remember how I said that Coppola agreed for Brando to have a screen test, put down $1 million bond, and work for cheap, knowing that he would never do all of those things?
Yeah.
That's what Vito would do.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, we'll make a deal. We'll make a deal. We'll be reasonable men. We can reason together.
Yeah.
And then, but he would have the plan, which is exactly what Michael does. When Vito leaves the meeting with the five families, that's when he knows it's Barzini. And then later on, he's talking to Michael basically about, how they're going to come at him and how Michael has to take them out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But he doesn't get a guarantee. And then Michael says,
I have to go to the bathroom. Is that all right?
and McCluskey's like, you gotta go, you gotta go. He's so oblivious.
Yeah.
But now Sollozzo frisks him again.
Yeah.
Michael heads off to the bathroom. It's all so amazing. The
Yeah.
sound design, the set design. This is, by the way, the actual bathroom in that restaurant.
Oh, wow.
But they did have to add the old-fashioned toilets.
Right.
And he reaches behind the tank. And again, as a director, he could reach right up, find it right away.
Yeah.
But it's better that he doesn't. It takes a little while. It's hard to pull that gun out. And we hear the sounds of the train while we're in the restaurant. We cut back to the dining room for a moment, hear the trains, and then we're back with Michael, and he brings himself together, walks back into the restaurant, cameras behind him. And of course, Clemenza said, you come out guns blazing.
Yeah.
He's not supposed to sit down.
Right.
But he does sit down. And we hear Sollozzo speaking in Italian.
Nicolo, tu mi capisci, no? Sei italiano come tu padri?
It doesn't matter what he's saying.
Tu padri.
And then the camera just slowly pushes in. Just watch Al Pacino's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
The performance and the intensity and all the thoughts in his mind. It's just absolutely amazing.
And this is why you fight to cast someone like Al Pacino, because you know what your movie needs and you know what he can bring to the table. And that slow close-up is evidence all on its own of Coppola making the right decision here, because you see him just, like you said, Steve, we saw him earlier sitting on that bench thinking. He is right here thinking, once I pull this trigger, there's no going back. You know, there's no going back to the life I had. I'm essentially killing the life I had with Kay, killing the life I had in the military, killing the life I had and the dreams I had to go straight, the dreams I had to not be a part of my family. To
be a governor, a senator, to
all
be
of
president of the United
It's all
States.
gone. It's all gone in this moment. Yeah, if I do this. Yeah.
And this is a Walter Murch, who's the sound guy on this, who's later one of the great editors of all time. The train sound is his idea. And that building screech of the train is so powerful. And then Michael stands up, shoots Sollozzo in the head, shoots McCluskey in the throat, which is what's in the book. And in the book, it says there's a spray of blood when he shoots Sollozzo, which there is. Coppola, one of his notes in his notebook was that the fork, McCluskey's fork, be in midair. You know, and again, it's these little tiny details that makes the scene so memorable.
Yeah.
He hits the table, which flips over, and then there's just huge stun reaction. And it was really important as Michael turns to walk out, don't drop the gun right away.
Yeah.
Because all of us are thinking, we've heard it a couple of times, you got to drop the gun. You just got to drop the gun. And we're going, is he going to drop the gun? And so just that second and a half of hesitation makes it even better. And the music hits. And we cut back to these dead bodies. And so we said, the studio didn't want Al Pacino. They were constantly talking about firing Coppola.
Yeah.
They were constantly unhappy with what they were seeing of Al Pacino's performance. This is the scene that kept Al Pacino and kept Coppola on the payroll to finish making The Godfather.
That's good. And it makes sense. He flips the gun instead of just letting it slide down. He makes it to his... And then I'm going to ask you a question in a second after I say this, but also the way that they're framed in the camera, it is a color version of what you see pictures of gangland slayings from that time. Coppola knew exactly how to frame that shot so it would remind people of pictures they've seen of gangland slayings in black and white from the 40s and the 30s, you know. And I thought that was brilliant. The reality, the blood spray, the wide open mouth, the strewn body, you know, all of that is there on purpose for effect, and it's brilliant. So let me ask you this, Steve.
Yes.
Has Michael Corleone ever killed anybody before this moment?
Yes.
You do.
War.
So why is he so unsettled by the killing?
I think this is my feeling. Of course, we don't know. We know he's a war hero.
That's what I'm asking. Do you think? But is he a war hero for having killed people, or a war hero for having saved people?
So yeah, we don't know the answer. But I think It's exactly what Sonny said. It's not like you're killing someone from a distance with a rifle.
Good point.
It's you're up close and you get brains all over your nice Ivy League suit.
Yeah, it's a whole nother ballgame.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, there are obviously killing someone is it's a huge thing. It is but killing someone in war and murdering 2 people in a restaurant, that's different. That's my feeling. What's your feeling?
Yeah, I think I wonder, because I don't know how much Sonny knows about. I don't know how much Michael told him. I don't know how much, he's a war hero, so we don't know why he's a war hero. We don't know what he did, who he saved, or whatever. But clearly, he's never had an upfront and close killing like this. Yeah, and obviously the weight of the moment too, right? The fact that he now is a stone cold murder. This is war, but it isn't war. You know what I'm saying? And so his killing of these 2 men in cold blood is the end of what we had said, or what I'd said earlier, that the end of the life he had before. So all the weight of it all comes on him in that moment. But he's nervous. He lingers, then turns, flips the gun. It makes a very loud noise when it hits the ground instead of having it just slide down his leg and down. So all of it is huge for him, and it's the only time he kills until he kills his brother, I think. Right? It's the only other time.
He doesn't kill his brother, though.
Well, I mean, sorry, he has his brother killed. No, I guess then is this the only murder he commits that we see on screen in any of the Godfather movies?
That he actually, I don't remember Godfather 3 very well, but I think so.
I think
everything else is him. He orders a lot of people killed.
So I think it's the only time he kills someone, or people rather, in all 3 movies. So, very interesting moment for sure.
By the way, I don't know if I'll cut this in or use it at all, but because then I really got curious. I just went on and looked it up. He was a captain, according to
captain in the Marines.
Yeah.
And the dress greens he's wearing, and like I said, you can cut this out if you want. The dress greens he's wearing is usually what you wore from September through April, but then after the war, they allowed you to wear the dress greens for certain occasions. It was his choice to wear the dress greens when he wanted to wear them. So maybe the wedding is in April, in spring, rather than in summer, but it certainly feels like summer.
Yeah, it's New York. I mean, it's certainly not winter. We know that.
No, I know it's not winter. Yeah.
All right. Well, and this was the moment that was going to be the intermission.
Oh, okay.
This was, and it was Evans who said, "No intermission. Don't let up."
That's smart.
I like intermissions. I like, if you're seeing a big long movie, I like intermissions.
Yeah. I like
3 hours is a long way to go without a pee break.
It is, and the score, listening to the score again to get you back into the mood of the movie, I think is a great gift too with intermissions for sure.
And now we cut to, it's so funny because you just mentioned how Coppola framed the bodies to look like these old newspapers. And that's what we see, is that they're actually photographs from old newspapers of these bodies. They're real.
Yeah.
Again, mostly shot by George Lucas. And now we're in sort of the montage of the war. We heard Clemenza say all hell's going to break loose. And that's what we see. The music, by the way, is a piece written by Carmine Coppola.
Oh, okay.
And it is Carmine who is playing the piano in one of the scenes. And I love that, Francis put a shoulder holster on his dad while he's playing the piano. And we hear that Barzini was questioned. We see lots of bodies. We see them, eating a bunch of pasta. We see the spaghetti going in the trash, which is very symbolic of death. We see these guys, including Clemenza, sleeping on the mattresses because we're going to the mattresses. And then we hear a headline that Vito Corleone is going home.
Yeah.
And we're back at the compound. There are reporters there. There are cops there. The ambulance pulls in. The bed comes into the house. And they carry the bread up the stairs. Here's something I didn't know. So Brando liked practical jokes.
Yes, he did.
So he was lying in this bed, and it was him really getting carried up these stairs. Before he got in the bed, he got a bunch of pieces of lead and put them in the bed with him. So the bed was like 300 and something pounds.
Son of a bitch.
They had to carry it up over and over again.
He's a bastard.
Right? And again, there's babies crying. There's chaos there. It all feels like family.
What's the matter with you, Carlo?
Shut up and sit the table.
They do a very good job of making us hate that guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Carlo's a dick.
And we're back in the bedroom. Everyone's around him. And Tom's sort of bringing him up to date and about what's been going on. Sonny hit them. We hit them back. And you can see Sonny and Tom are worried about what Vito's going to think.
Yeah.
You know, did we handle this right? And there's so much going on. Brando doesn't say a word, and there's so much going on as he takes all this in. And we hear we're sending Fredo to Vegas, and Fredo's like, "I'm going into the casino business." And then the Don says, "Where's Michael?" And Tom leans in and tells him,
It was Michael who killed Sollozzo.
I love Vito's reaction. He closes his eyes, turns his head away, and just that hand gesture of leave me.
Yeah.
Because it's not what he wanted.
Nope. And they knew it. That's why they hesitated to tell him.
Yeah.
I will say one thing, though. I mean, the way you portray, I want to be a little more fair to Fredo. Fredo's kind of in a shit position.
True.
And he's not, pushed in, which is what leads to his explosion in Godfather 2. But he's in there. I'm going to learn the casino, but I think he's trying to convince himself to be happy about this situation, being sent away from his father. He feels the guilt of fumbling the gun and not being able to shoot these guys when his father was shot. It was shot on his watch. So it's this idea of like one was sent away with nobility and hero type of atmosphere, right? Michael is sent away to Italy because after having done this incredible thing to avenge his father. Fredo's being sent away to Vegas to get him out of the way because he embarrassed the family. So they're putting him under Mo Green's thumb. It's two different people getting sent away at the same time for two completely different reasons.
There might be a whole movie to make of young Fredo.
Oh,
like how did Fredo get to be where Fredo is?
Yeah,
the middle kid between this super strong personality Sonny and this super powerful character Michael, and who loves his dad and what ends up happening to him. It actually is, and even through the story of Godfather 2, like how what is his meetings with whoever he meets with for his betrayals? Like, what is his life with Mo Green like?
With Johnny Ola and as well in Godfather 2, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can do a Cobra Kai, you can do a Fredo Kai. Let's reimagine it through a different perspective, where Michael and Sonny are the villains in Fredo's life, and Tom is the villain in Fredo's life.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, is like, Michael is a villain.
Right.
I mean, that's, we might really care for him, which I certainly do, but he's a bad person.
He is a bad person.
And the thing too that I was just thinking about that had never occurred to me until this moment. Michael's the guy that goes, I don't want to be in the family business. And yet, who's in the room right after Dad gets shot? Michael is there.
Yeah.
Where's Fredo's not there?
Right.
Who's in the room when they're coming up with all the plans? Michael is there. Fredo's not there.
Fredo's not there. You're right.
He is not included in this. He's never trusted by the family.
Nope.
Find out what it'll pimp to tie his hide, and I want his ass now, right now.
And Tom, again, it's the same thing. Settle down.
Yeah.
If you go after Tattaglia, all hell's gonna break loose. Let the smoke clear. Pop can negotiate.
No, Pop can't do nothing till he's better. I'm gonna decide what's gonna go.
All right, but your war's costing us a lot of money. Nothing's coming in. We can't do business.
Well, neither can they. Don't
They
worry
don't
about
have
it.
our
Please,
overhead.
don't worry about
We
it.
can't afford a stalemate.
Well, then there ain't no more stalemate. I'm gonna end it by killing that old bastard.
It's so, because these are powerful actors.
Yeah.
Duvall and Kahn going toe to toe. And then this is the line, man.
Well, you just do what I tell you to do. God damn it, if I had a wartime consigliere of Sicilian, I wouldn't be in a shape. Papajenko, look what I got.
Tom's reaction is great. And Sonny's too.
Sonny immediately. I'm sorry. Look, Mom made some food, blah, blah, blah. Because, because he does love his brother. He does love, remember, Sonny found Tom and brought him home to the house. So their connection, you could argue, is just as strong as Sonny has with Michael or Fredo. It's a strong, strong connection. So it's like even in that moment when he yells too much, he catches himself a few seconds later and he apologizes, because he knows he's a fucking hothead. That's why I don't think he's a bad Don. I think Sonny understands that he's a hothead. He just can't control himself in certain moments.
But that's why he's a bad Don.
He's able to be pulled back. He's able to be pulled back by Tom.
Sometimes.
Right. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes not. Right. I mean, he is a hothead. He knows he's a hothead, but that's also why he's a bad Don. You don't want a Don to be a hothead. That's what I think. I
feel like John Gotti was a fucking hothead, and he was pretty successful. So I think some of these Dons are hotheads. I just think it's a different situation.
Sure.
But I see your point. Absolutely. I don't know. I'm just trying to find fun new angles into the movie.
Of course, it's a good conversation to have. Well, and as we said before, in certain circumstances, Sonny's exactly who you want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The other thing that just occurred to me from what you were saying, I was like, I never thought about that Tom is insecure. And what I think is when we see him in Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
He's so smooth. He's got it all together. And I suddenly went, well, he's the Irish guy, German Irish, not a Sicilian. He's supposed to be a Sicilian to have this gig. And he knows it. And I think in a weird way, it's a weird thing I'm about to say, but his confidence, his veneer of confidence comes from overcoming insecurity, if that makes sense. Like he knows I have to be perfect.
Right.
I have to be perfectly smooth because I'm in this tenuous position and I'm always worried. And what Sonny says in this moment, if I had a real concierge, a Sicilian, Papa had Genko, look what I got.
Yeah.
That's
why do you say Genko? It's Genko.
Genkos.
I'm
not stupid.
No, I'm just saying. I didn't know if maybe I'd missed a thing.
It's so funny. A buddy of mine, I don't know if you saw it was on Twitter, commented on that sometimes we refer to someone by their first name, sometimes by the last name, sometimes character name.
That's your friend. I didn't want to respond to him, but I didn't appreciate the implication that it's an LA thing. We're just talking about them as we talk about them, but we're not going to go, well, Mr. Caan in this moment and Mr. Pacino says in this moment. I'm not going to go, James Caan says in this moment.
Well, it's such a funny thing because it's like I had a realization because I one of the scenes I do in my classes is from Crimson Tide. And and it's the scene where they're having dinner. It's great scene.
Yeah, it is.
And one of the things I realized, because I taught this over and over and over again, is I would always say Denzel does this and Hackman does this.
Right.
And I was like, I never say Gene does this and Washington does this.
Right.
I always refer to we always refer to Denzel by his first name.
Yeah.
And we always refer to Hackman by his last name.
Right.
I don't say Robert and James in this scene. I say Duval and Khan.
Right.
Or somebody, and it's just such an interesting thing. And anyway, the reason, because you brought up the Genko thing.
Yeah.
One of the things I said is like, I'm always paranoid that I'm mispronouncing things.
Really?
Like, all the time. All the time.
You rarely do it. Yeah.
Well, but
that's why I question myself when you do, because I go, wait, did he do research and this is the actual pronunciation? Like, I really question myself. But then I remember they do say Genko in the movie a number of times. So I was like, okay, I want to make sure.
No, but I'm glad that I've snowed you much that you actually question yourself rather than thinking I'm getting it wrong.
Well, I just trust you.
I appreciate that. It drives me nuts whenever I hear myself do something wrong, and because I'm editing it, so I hear it multiple times.
Oh, right. Fair point.
The worst one of all time, and I know then we'll move on.
Yeah.
Is when I kept saying when we did Life of Brian, and I kept saying Sermon on the Mound, instead of Sermon on the Mount, and and I think I said it 5 times. Anyway, that was certainly a digression. We're having a nice meal. Sonny's talking business.
Well, Papa never talked business at the table in front of the kids.
Hey, shut up, Carmen. Hey, don't you ever tell her to shut up. You got that?
Mom's line is the most interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Don't interfere.
Don't interfere. Yeah.
That is the culture.
Yep.
That is tradition. This is the husband and the wife. Mm-hmm. And then, but this is a perfect reversal.
Sonny, Tom, I'd like to talk to you maybe after dinner. I could be doing a lot more for the family.
We don't discuss business at the table.
Little shot at Carlo, yeah.
I love that the next thing we do is we're just alone with Fredo and Vito in the room.
Yeah.
Fredo didn't leave.
No.
He stays because he loves his father.
He does, and he feels guilty. He loves his father, and he feels terrible about what happened.
We're in Sicily. It was really shot in Sicily. Unsurprisingly, the studio was against it. Coppola had to fight and fight and fight to get the money to go shoot in Sicily. He says it was the image of Al Pacino walking with the shepherds through Sicily that made him know he had to cast him.
That makes sense.
It's so interesting to me. And he's with these 2 guards with rifles, and this guy, Don Tomasino, is an older guy, pulls up. and he's basically responsible for him, and that enemies know that he's in Sicily and they're looking for him. And he goes, "Where are you guys going?" He goes, "I'm going to Corleone," because of course Vito's real last name is not Corleone. That's the town that he came from. And Don Tomasino was like, "Well, take my car." And he's like, "No, I want to walk." I totally get this. Like I'm going back to the place of my family heritage, and I want to walk the ground to it to get there. Have you ever been to Bolivia?
Yes, when I was 7 years old.
Wow.
I've never been back, but yeah, we went when I was 7 years old. I remember. I have memories of it when I went. My brother went more recently in the 90s, late 90s, with my dad. And my mom has been back a couple times. My dad went a few times. My dad went more than anybody in the family. My dad went more times to Bolivia than anybody else. But I will find my way back there because Lindley's vacationed in Peru with her family, so she loved it. She did the Machu Picchu thing. So at some point, if we're blessed with the good fortune, to have the financial ability to do so, I think I'd like to go to South America at least one more time before I pass, with her. So yeah,
I would love to do the Machu Picchu thing. My mom's been there. It sounds just amazing. Bolivia is such a. Where's your family from?
Yeah, Bolivia. Both my parents.
I mean, where specifically, in La Paz or?
Oh yeah, my mom from La Paz, my dad from Cochabamba, and for people who are watching, Cochabamba is where Sosa is from in Scarface. When they pan to that, his villa amongst the mountains, it says Cochabamba, Bolivia in red, and that's where my dad was from. Of course, my mom from the capital. Yeah,
right. Because I just think of This is Michael's first. I'm assuming this is his first time in Sicily.
1,000%.
Yeah,
first time there. Yeah,
and what he is taking in and how this is transforming him is really interesting. They make it to Corleone. There's an old church, and it's interesting. Again, we just did Patton. Patton is liberated Sicily. That was his big battle, was marching up through Sicily to the bottom of Italy. Right. And we have Americans driving by, and I love the Italians. Love the Americans.
Hey, thank you to the American GI, Clark Boley.
And then we see some young women, and Michael gets hit by the thunderbolt.
Oh man, Apollonia!
This is Simonetta Stefanelli.
Okay,
I just talked about my pronunciation issues. Simonetta Stefanelli.
Sure.
That is her name.
Yeah.
And she is such an amazingly unique beauty.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely stunning, totally herself, not made up in a crazy way or anything
natural.
Like that.
Very natural. Beauty, yeah.
And I love too that we hear, as they say in Sicily, women are more dangerous than shotguns. And then we hear a Sicilian sort of variation on the Godfather theme.
Yeah.
We also hear that there's a lot of guys who have died. Why have they died? Because of vendetta.
Yeah.
Which is something that's going to come up in Godfather 2 as well.
For sure.
And they come to a nice cafe, and guy comes out who runs the cafe, and they're chatting about the girls, and he's talking about girls, and they saw some beauties, and my friend got hit with a thunderbolt. And then they start describing this girl. She would tempt the devil himself. And the guy's laughing and talks about her body and her hair and her mouth. And she's got a purple dress with a purple ribbon, more Greek than Italian. And the reaction is strong.
See, and this is the hypocrisy of men. Men in this one scene is the hypocrisy of men in 1972. He was more than willing to join in with the dudes talking about a woman's body and her breasts and her butt and her look and everything like that. But the second, as long as it was someone else's daughter, but the second it was his daughter, oh, don't you dare, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, what the fuck? What's your consistency here? So that's the thing I think is always the hypocrisy of men. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just a truth. It's a fact. The moon is in the sky at night. There's hypocrisy within men when it comes to your sister or your mom or your cousin or someone you're related to. The way other men speak about them if they speak in the same manner the way you speak about other women, all of a sudden you get pissed and don't realize the hypocrisy of the fact that you're upset only because you're related to this person. Never mind that this woman is related to other people, as well. So I find that to be a little bit of hypocrisy.
Of course it is. It's 100%. Well, and particularly because men know how terrible men can be.
Exactly. That's why, and that's why men, get gray hair when they have daughters, because they understand what's coming.
And he kind of storms out, and it's like, oh crap, this guy is his daughter. Let's get the hell out of here. Let's leave. This is big trouble. And Michael says, tell him to come out here. Again, this is in Coppola's notebook, is like, this is the moment that he says you must see that he could be the Don.
Yep.
It's not just his strength to murder the guys. It's not just his presence of mind at the hospital. It's to sit back and have that power, which he does.
I apologize if I offended you.
Ci dispiace se l'ho offeso.
I'm a stranger in this country.
È straniero in questo paese.
And I meant no disrespect to you or your daughter.
E non voleva mancare di rispetto né a lei né a vostra figlia.
They had practiced this whole speech in Italian.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Al Pacino didn't speak Italian.
Right.
He also couldn't dance and couldn't drive a car. These are all things that he was supposed to be able to do in the movie. And as they're practicing him saying this speech in Italian, and it's not going very well, that's what gives Coppola the idea to have it translated, which is so much better. Mm-hmm. Same thing before. If this thing that he didn't want didn't happen, he wouldn't have come up with this great idea.
Right.
If Brando doesn't show up fat to Apocalypse Now, you don't have the ending of Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
That's where Coppola's greatness is, or one of the places his greatness is.
Yeah.
And his speech is so powerful and respectful.
Yeah.
And I think the most powerful moment, two powerful moments. One is he reveals who he is and that people give a lot of money to find him and kill him. And the next moment is,
but then your daughter would lose a father.
Allora vostra figlia perderebbe un padre.
Instead of gaining a husband.
That is a thing to say.
Well,
do you think he even has thought about Kay?
Oh, yeah. I think he has. Sure, as any normal human being would. But he also realizes he can't spend too much time ruminating about Kay, because there are bigger issues in his mind for what he has to do with his life. And like a soldier, Kay is essentially a fallen fellow soldier in the situation, and he has to move on to the next war, the next battle. Still honor and respect what was there, but he's moved on, and so I think, sure, he's thought about her, but he certainly wouldn't open the door to Apollonia if he was still in love with her, or if he ever really, Steve, was in love with her. That's
it's so funny. Like this last time I watched it, Michael seemed colder throughout the whole movie than I had ever experienced him before. Like his relationship with Kay felt more false and put on. It felt more like a role that he was playing to be the senator, to be the governor. This is the kind of wife I should have in the way I envision my life.
Yeah.
It didn't. There are a couple of tender moments. And I think certainly from the moment he sees Apollonia, I don't think he even has any thought of Kay.
Right.
Like,
no,
I think he just
agree.
like, this is it.
I want to meet your daughter.
Vuole conoscere vostra figlia.
With your permission.
Con il suo permesso.
And under the supervision of your family.
E con il consenso di tutta la famiglia.
With all respect.
And Dad puts on the suspenders. That was Coppola's idea to make this moment more formal. Now this is a formal moment.
Yeah.
And he agrees and says, come to my house Sunday with your companions. And they ask her name, and he says,
Apollonia.
Then.
The whole sequence of the first meal together with the gifts and looks, it's all looks between Apollonia and Michael. They're just great.
Yeah.
The scene's great.
Well, and here's a question for you, Steve, or a statement, really. He never looks at Kay the way he looks at Apollonia.
Never.
Right. And I guarantee you, if Apollonia had said, I love you, to him on the phone, he'd have said it immediately back, no matter what the guys were going to make fun of him for, because his love for her is stronger than his fear for embarrassment or shame in front of the guys. And that's the difference. Like when you meet someone, you like, boom, that's boom.
You get hit by the thunderbolt.
When you get hit by the thunderbolt, That's the difference. You know, everybody's like, oh, I don't need to get married. I don't need a man. I don't need a woman. I do my own thing, blah, blah, blah. The second the thunderbolt hits you, you can shut the fuck up because you're in the pit with everybody else. That's the thing. It's cool to be like thinking you don't need anybody. But when you meet that one person, all bets are off. And you're doing shit you never thought you'd do because that person means so much to you, you know? If you get the chance to meet that person.
And what's so interesting, he's still being Michael Corleone.
Oh, yeah.
He still has that power. Sure. He's still completely in control of everything he's doing. But he wants this person in a way he doesn't want anything else in the whole film.
Right.
Or the whole series of films. And I love, you know, like her opening up and seeing the gold necklace and just the unspoken connection between them. And then there's the scene of them walking together with all the old ladies and people behind because they're chaperoning, and she stumbles a little bit and he catches her. And this is all, you know, stuff that only an Italian could make this movie.
Yeah.
We're back in New York. Our guys are our guards for Sonny are kind of pitching pennies near a stairway. And then Sonny says goodbye to the same bridesmaid that he had met at the wedding. This is Lucy. And he goes down the stairs and leaves. And I just have to, as quickly as I possibly can, tell you what Coppola cut out of the book.
Okay.
Because Lucy is a big character in the book.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, and Johnny Fontaine is a much bigger character in the book.
Right.
So in the book, we go back with Johnny Fontaine, who can't sing anymore because his throat's blown out. He thinks too much drinking, too much smoking. He has a buddy who he calls out, who he used to sing with, who works construction. He brings him out. He turns that guy into a big star. We follow his career. He's an alcoholic. He's going to die. Johnny can't sing anymore, so he's going to become a producer, which is backed by the Don. So he becomes a producer, still can't sing. Then, after Sonny's death, which we're getting to, Lucy moves to Las Vegas. And in Las Vegas, she falls in love. She's working under Fredo, falls in love with the doctor. They have sex. And I'm just going to say what this thing is, because we've already introduced that Sonny is a very well-endowed man.
Yes.
And that Lucy, he is the first man to satisfy her sexually. And then the doctor, who she has fallen in love with, determines that the reason for this is that Lucy has a medical condition, which means that her nether regions are proportionally large to Sonny's. And so that only a man that big could satisfy her. And so he arranges to have surgery to reduce her size to a more reasonable amount. Yes, this is all in the book.
Wow.
And at the hospital, we see Johnny Fontaine, who knows Lucy because they know each other through The Godfather, through which the doctor meets Johnny Fontaine and says, no, you didn't blow out your voice from smoking and drinking. You have like polyps or something. And he fixes Johnny Fontaine's voice, who goes back to being a huge star.
Wow.
This is like just this whole, and it is, I would say that Johnny Fontaine is as big a character in the book as Michael Corleone. You know, and it's just like these long chapters about Hollywood and movie stars and who's having sex with who and all this stuff. And it's like, what the fuck is this about? and it's like the simplest cut I've ever seen out of a book. It's like, cut all that out.
Yeah.
This is a movie, but this is a story about succession, about a king with 3 sons. That's what it's about. Okay. I hope I said that as quickly as possible and not in a way, but it's such a salacious story. And then Sonny shows up to visit his sister Connie, and she opens up the door and turns her face away from him. And then he sees her face, and she's been beat up, and he is losing it.
It was my fault.
Where is
Sonny, please. It was my fault. Sonny, it was my fault. I hit him. I started to fight with him. Please, Sonny. I hit him, so he hit me.
I've bitten the thumb before, bitten the finger before. Like
I've never bitten the finger.
Oh, the fist. Bit the fist.
Yeah.
I bit the fist before, yeah.
Yeah. And she says it was my fault. It's my fault. Don't hurt him.
Oh, God. You know, you live long enough and you meet people who are in abusive relationships, and it breaks your heart. You know, it breaks your heart. And the way these women are, in essence, trapped in these relationships, and the way they excuse these horrible men for the things they do, it's heartbreaking. You know, and this moment just hit me harder than it had before, and because in the past when you're younger, you're watching this, oh yeah, shitty situation. But as you get older and you've met people like this, who've been in relationships like this, and your heart just breaks because it's a cycle and you hope they break it. I was a accounts payable accountant for a domestic violence shelter in Tallahassee for the last few months I'd lived there before I moved to Los Angeles. And I heard the stories. I saw these people and these women and I saw men come and bang on the windows and try to get into the shelter to try to get to these women. And so I remember this kind of stuff. And so when you see this moment here, it just hit me a little bit hard as I'm an older person now. That moment is her just like, it's my fault. You're just like, oh my God, it's so heartbreaking. Why would you let someone do this to you? And the thing is, I'm not blaming them. Obviously, it's more like, well, it's sad to see that you're in a position like this and can't seem to find your way out. And you're the Don's daughter. You would think you have all the resources, but of course, Connie has has a little bit of the Fredo in her too. She's a sensitive woman. She wants to be taken care of, and she's got these two strong personalities. Michael in his quietness, Sonny in his hot-headedness, and the Don. Plus, she's a woman in the male-dominated patriarchal culture, patriarchal society at that time in the 40s. So how much of that is she paying? Plus, she's like made to serve, made to make the food. Remember, you told me, or in the first part, how Talia Shire had to make the food to make it feel like it's Italian or whatever. So it's like, what was her recourse for strength in that situation? And so it's a shame she ends up with someone as terrible as Carlo for now.
It's so awful, and I totally agree with you. And because when you're young, you haven't maybe seen these things very often.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully you have, and hopefully this isn't your parents, this isn't, family members and things like that, you're involved with. But as you grow older, the odds are more and more likely that on some level you're going to rub up against stuff like this. And I certainly have both going both ways. I've known some people where it was a woman abusing a man and not so much physically abuse, but psychological abuse.
Yeah, certainly.
Takes so long to get, and I think this is part of why, I know it's a long episode and we're digressing a lot, but I think hopefully one of the things that happens to you as you get older is you just get more compassionate, and realize, because when you're young, it's like, well, just leave.
Yeah.
Just leave, get out. What's wrong with you? Just leave. You don't have to stay there. And when you get older, it starts to become, you start to see how difficult it really is. And even that these aren't necessarily weak people. There could be people that are very, very strong in certain elements of life. In fact, to some degree, it can be your strength that keeps you there, because you're like, well, I can handle it. Particularly when kids become involved and you're trying to protect the kids, or you're trying to keep a veneer of normalcy.
Yeah.
And she's trying to protect her husband. And he says,
what am I going to do? I'm going to make that baby an orphan before he's born.
And then we cut to Carlo, who's out on a stoop because he's taking bets and stuff. And Sonny pulls up, gets out of the car with a broom handle in his hand, which, by the way, he asked the prop guy to cut off a broom handle for him and didn't tell Francis. So he just comes out with that and then just grabs Carlo and just beats the crap out of him.
Yeah.
Although I will say, fight scene wise, the misses are not good.
They're terrible.
They're terrible. He's like 5 inches away on some of these. And you could see him pull the kick. Like whoever did the fight choreography did not teach James Caan how to do this or didn't angle it the right way so that he could get away with it.
Yeah.
But he does beat the crap out of him. And then we cut, as we do many times in this film, from intensity and darkness and violence to brightness, because we're back at a wedding.
Benedictio Deo Omnipotentis, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
A wedding very different from the first one we saw. We have like a procession down the street with a band. Carmine Coppola arranged the band because mom and dad traveled with Francis to Sicily. We see our guards. We see Michael and Apollonia arm in arm. We see Don Tomasimo in his wheelchair. There's this beautiful wide shot of the wedding going down the hill, down the stairs.
Yeah.
That is Gordon Willis's favorite shot in the film. He said, finally, I have a beautiful shot in my movie. It's like, finally? This movie's amazing looking. And it's just so sweet and lovely. And I don't understand what they're doing with the spoon as the bride and groom go around. It's some Sicilian tradition. I don't know what it is.
So. Yeah.
But it feels very real. And then the first dance. And I go like, is this the first time they've really touched? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Today.
That's a good point.
On this wedding day.
Right. On the day of your daughter's wedding.
Yeah. And then we go to their wedding night.
Yeah.
And it is tentative and beautiful, and they've never even spoken together in the film, at least. And he kisses her forehead and her cheek, and then they kiss, and it's just a gorgeous, beautifully shot first night scene.
Yeah.
It's back to New York, and it's Kay.
Yeah.
From him making love with the true love of his life
to
this other woman showing up at the compound in a red dress and a hat. And Tom comes out and says, hey, we weren't expecting you. You should call.
Yes, well, I have. I mean, I've tried writing and calling. Now, I want to reach Michael.
And Tom's given I love two things I love about this. First of all, he's just a lawyer. Nobody knows where he is. We know he's all right. We don't know where he is. And I love that there's a wrecked car right next to it.
Yeah.
And she's like, what's that? It's like, oh, it's an accident. It's fine. No one's hurt. Because they're in the middle of a war.
Will you give this letter to Michael, please? Please.
Well, if I accepted that, in a court of law, they could prove that I have knowledge of his whereabouts.
Let me call you a cab.
Yeah, she wants to come in. She said she let her cab go.
Yeah.
And she said, can I come in? Yeah.
In the book, Mom totally invites Kay in and is really warm and brings her in as kind of part of the family.
Wow.
At this time.
Wow.
While Michael is marrying Apollonia. Back to Connie. She's very pregnant, answers the phone. There's a woman asking for Carlo if he can make it tonight. It's terrible. And then Carlo comes in and she's got dinner on the table and he says, I'm not hungry. I'll eat out after. This scene. So here's why this scene is here. It is here because the studio said there's not enough violence in this movie.
That's so ridiculous. Okay.
We need more violence. And they said, we've hired a violence director. And he's just going to make some violence to shoot some action. And Coppola says, no, I'll shoot some action. And so he shot this of Carlo beating up Talia Shire.
Clean it up! Clean it up! Clean it up! I said clean it up! Clean it up!
What's it like to shoot your sister? Getting beat up by an actor you've hired to play her husband. And he is fully committed to this scene.
You know what? It is the opposite of James Caan beating him up where you can see it miss. This feels this feels real.
Yep.
And scary.
And very scary, like the whipping with the belts and everything like that. And of course, I'm sure the violence director directed him how to whip her with the
I don't
belts
think
so
he ever I don't think the violence director ever showed up.
Oh,
That's my
really?
understanding.
Okay.
I think this was his way of not having that person show
I
up.
hope the stage combat director, kind of made sure that she was okay. But you never know now in the 70s. You don't know. Because Pacino in Godfather 2 does really slap Diane Keaton with all his might. They've both spoken about that moment. And so was Coppola okay filming his sister? Because it is harrowing because she's mad, she's angry, she's frustrated, she doesn't know what to do. So she breaks shit like a child would do. And then with all the gall in the world, the son of a bitch says, all right, clean it up. Oh my God. And she loses it. He chases her down into the bathroom and Coppola brilliantly keeps the camera at a distance. So you are left to imagine the horrible beating she must have endured in an enclosed room by this maniac,
And it's funny too. There's a thing that Talia Shire does, and I know there are people I know who don't love Talia Shire in this film.
I don't fucking understand that at all.
She does the same thing she does in Rocky, where she's yelling at another Paulie, at her brother, like,
"Oh, right,
what do you ever do for me?" Like that whole scene.
Yeah,
there is a certain kind of screaming anger that feels really real. What Talia Shire is doing in both of those scenes.
Yeah.
It's not movie acting. It's not movie anger. This feels like this person in this culture at this moment just completely fucking losing it. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And then we cut to a baby crying, and we're back at the house. And this is, again, Coppola continually asks this question. Where's the family?
Yeah.
Where are the children? What are they eating? All of these things that are completely not necessary that make this movie what it is.
You just wait there. Son of a bitch! Son of a bitch! What's the matter?
Dude, the change in his face. The change in his face when she says what she says. He's like, and then all of a sudden it's just full on, I'm gonna kill this son of a bitch. Yeah.
Yep. Well, and something I didn't mention, but we've established multiple times when Sonny is out with Lucy, when Michael goes to the hotel, we're always going to send some guys.
Yeah, right.
They're always going to be some guys. And this time, Sonny just tells him to open the gate, and he drives off, and it's Tom that says, hey, you got to catch up to him.
Yeah.
And it's that, like, 45 seconds. That is the difference.
Yep. Because he says to him, right, at the Tom, he says to him, get out of here, and he drives off.
Yeah.
And Tom, yeah, he's right. You're right, Steve. The 45 seconds that makes all the difference.
Yeah, and we're at the toll booth. This was all shot on a runway. Everything is built for this. Sonny's in I don't know why this was important to Coppola, but it's a 1941 Lincoln Continental. It's a cool car. And a car stops in front of him at the toll booth, and Sonny's reaching for some money, and the car stalls out in front of him, so he's kind of stuck. And he looks over at the guy, toll taker, who drops some coins and ducks down. And then Sonny knows.
He knows. Yeah.
And the moment, he's not Fredo. It's not like he doesn't react quickly.
No.
But there is nothing to do. And the guys come up out of the toll booth and they just open fire. And it's very much Bonnie and Clyde and Coppola on purpose. Very much Sam Peckinpah. He is hit with 147 squibs. Wow. That's how it's on his body. And when they're wiring him up, the stunt guy, because it takes a long time to place 147 squibs, stunt guy says to Con, he says, I never put this many squids on a guy in my life. And James Caan says, I don't think it was necessary for you to tell me that right now.
Yeah, because those squibs, Steve, you as a director, I don't know if you've worked with squibs before.
No, I've never done it.
Okay, they don't.
They hurt.
I was going to say, they don't not hurt you. They do. I mean, it's not a bullet, obviously, but it's a sharp pound into your skin and your chest. Yeah.
They hurt. Everything I've heard is that they hurt.
Yeah, it's like a paintball.
Yeah, exactly. And they even fire on him when he's down. They kick him in the face.
Oh,
it's just absolute. And again, you think about the first time you're seeing this movie, when you would think that Vito Corleone's dead when he gets shot with the fruit.
Right.
First time you see it. And the first time you see this, Michael's in Italy, Sonny, this is so shocking.
Yeah, it is.
Right in the middle of your movie for this guy to get killed. And then there's a pause, and then his guys pull up.
Yeah.
From far away. We dissolve to Tom. I love this scene so much. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's nighttime. He's sitting in the dark with a drink. We hear the Godfather theme. The camera pushes in, and Vito comes into frame.
Right.
Looking a little bit frail.
Remember, Tom is dealing, this is his brother. This is the man who brought him into this family. And he is sitting there like wondering what is going to happen next. Maybe guilt that he didn't work harder to stop Sonny. Maybe they should have handled the Carlos situation differently. What was the conversation with him to try to stop him from killing Bruno Tattaglia? Because this is vengeance for Bruno Tattaglia being killed.
Of course.
And so it's like there's so many things that he's probably pondering in that moment when Vito shows up.
Well, and he's thinking, I have to tell my father, essentially, that his son is dead.
Yeah.
My wife is crying upstairs. I hear cars coming to the house. Consigliere of mine. I think you should tell your Don what everyone seems to know.
I didn't tell Mama anything. I was about to come up and wake you just now and tell you.
But you needed a drink first. And now you've had your drink.
Brando's so good in the scene.
They shot Sonny on the causeway. He's dead.
That's he's so broken telling Vito that, man. Or telling, as your friend might need me to say, Mr. Corleone that. Yeah.
And there's Brando's taking it in.
Yeah.
And he takes a moment, but it's just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the difference between Vito and Sonny.
Right.
Because he wants revenge. You know he wants to kill the guys that killed his son. And he says,
I want all inquiries made. I want no acts of vengeance. I want you to arrange a meeting with the heads of the 5 families. This war stops now.
It's beautiful because he knows he's the Don. He has to be the oldest one in the room. He has to be the most calm person in the room. So him going over to Tom and hugging Tom when it should be Tom hugging the Don who's actually lost his blood son is such an important moment. They're like father to son.
Mm-hmm.
He's hugging him and giving him a place to cry. Yeah. And then he tells him to call Buonasera. So as Steve likes to say, there's the plant from the first monologue of the movie. Yep. The plant now shows up that he's got to clean up Sonny after he's been riddled with bullets.
Well, and like all good plants, you've totally forgotten about it.
Yes.
You're not thinking about this at all.
Yes.
But by the way, both Brando and Duvall do not like a lot of takes and are generally really good in the first few takes. They did 3 takes, and Brando said he was done. I'm done. And, when Brando says he's done, it's very hard to get him to go again.
Sure.
This is take 4.
Was it Duvall? Or was
it
Coppola?
Coppola. Neither of them wanted to do another take. And Coppola's like, we're doing take 4. And again, that's a good director. He just knows something. There's something else that we can get.
Sometimes you have to save us from ourselves. That's kind of how it is.
It was funny. I was just listening to Kate Winslet, who was interviewed on Mark Maron.
Oh, cool.
And she said, it's
really?
good. It's a good interview.
Wow,
yeah.
I got to listen to that. Okay.
What she said multiple times is that you got to trust your director if it's a good director, because you can't. I mean, you acted much more than me, but it's really hard to know, particularly in film acting. Theater acting, it's easier to know. Film acting, you don't know what is necessary or what is working, or it's just not possible.
And you can't control what take they use.
Yeah.
You really can't.
No.
And sometimes they think they know how you look better on screen, and you hate the take they use, thinking you looked better than another take. So it's just, you just never know. You surrender so much of your power in film if you're not the director. That's for sure.
100%. We go down this old-fashioned elevator to the funeral home, and there's Buonasera waiting. And and what's interesting, and it's more so in the book, but like, Buonasera doesn't know what he's going to have to do.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah,
he's scared. Maybe I'm going to have to lie to the police or get rid of a body or something like that.
Yeah,
you can see he's very scared.
Well, my friend, are you ready to do me the service?
Yes. What do you want me to do?
I want you to use all your powers and all your skills. I don't want his mother to see him this way.
And they pull back the sheet. And there's a reaction from Buonasera, who sees bodies all the time.
Yeah.
And he reacts to this.
It's horror. It's horror in his face. Yeah.
Look how they massacred my boy.
They massacred. Look how they massacred my boy. And I think it's the first time he's seen him.
I think so too.
Right? I mean, just the emotion, the overwhelming... he's overcome rather with emotion in that moment, and just the tears, and he's not weeping or anything, but he's just like, you can tell it's a genuine loss in his life to lose his firstborn son. It's a big deal.
Here's the note that I have. No one makes a face like Brando.
It's so true, man.
Yeah, so he can do things with his face that, like, just weird, that's just so powerful. Yeah. And before he did before he did this scene, he went to Coppola and said, "I need a moment." And he took a moment for himself, and then he did this scene. So James Caan and Duvall are such assholes. So later on, they're doing a scene, and all Duvall has to do, he has to walk across the room. That's all he has to do. And James Caan goes to Coppola. It's like, I think Bobby needs a moment. You take a moment. And then there's another moment where Duvall is doing his Brando impression. And in both of these times, they think Brando's not around. And Brando sees both of these things and is not happy.
Well, fuck him for putting lead in the hospital bed. It goes both ways. It goes both ways, Marlon. Mr. Brando. It goes both ways.
Can you imagine being on the set with Brando and mocking him?
No, I bust his balls day and night. Oh, yeah. He's one of the guys, man. He's a New York boy. He's a Midwestern boy, but he's one of the guys.
Yeah.
That's why you can't revere someone too much like that, or you lose all kinds of power and all kinds of ability to speak to them, you know?
And then we go from really dark to really happy because Michael's teaching Apollonia to drive and we're laughing and Don Tomasino's there. And, you know, we hear that things are getting bad. And then he tells Michael Santino they killed him.
Yeah.
And we just saw Vito not react to or have very little reaction to the death of his son. And now we see exactly the same thing with Michael.
Yeah.
And
the rude honking of Apollonia really shocks you.
Yeah.
Anger in that moment. Like, hey, leave him alone. His brother just died.
Yeah. And then, you know, we got to leave town because people know that Michael's here, and Michael sees Fabrizio and asks who's walking away, says, "Where are you going?" And Fabrizio looks back.
Yeah.
And then runs away.
Yeah.
And in that moment, Apollonia's in the car and Michael knows.
No, Apollonia!
And then we just see the wreck of the car and the leg of Apollonia.
Yeah.
You know what just occurred to me just now? What did Faye see when she came to find Michael? A wrecked car.
Oh, a wrecked car. What? Maybe a little foreshadowing. What a great point, Steve. Yeah.
Never thought about it until this moment.
Yeah.
Here's the note, and then we fade to black, and this is the note I have that I wrote down. That's the end of Michael's heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder what would have happened if Apollonia had lived.
It's a good question.
I don't think Fredo would be dead. I don't know if Carlo would be dead. But maybe the Corleones would be destroyed by the five families.
Yeah. Or, I mean, he has an Italian wife, right? Yeah. So he goes back and he's even more powerful like Vito was. Vito and his Italian wife as well. Like maybe he's more powerful what he intends to do and what he can do once he gets there, you know?
Yeah. Well, we don't know what that Michael would do in that alternate reality.
Yeah.
But what this Michael is going to do is going to be to take back the Corleone family and become the Godfather. But we're going to have to wait until part 3 of our exploration of the Godfather to find out exactly what happens. As always, we'd love to hear what you think. Do a search for the Cine-Files on Facebook. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes or YouTube or Google Play, Spotify, or even Audible or Amazon now, whatever's most convenient for you. If there's an opportunity to give us a review, we really, really could use it. In fact, we might make you an offer you can't refuse. If you want to buy The Godfather, Godfather 2, or in fact, I created a web page with a whole bunch of Coppola's films. Please visit Cine-Files.net where you can buy or stream those movies through Amazon Prime. You can support the show on patreon.com/The Cine-Files. You can find The Cine-Files on Twitter at Cine_Files, on Instagram at The Cine-Files Podcast. You can find me at SR Morris or SR Morris1 on Twitter and Instagram respectively. John, how about you?
Yeah, you can always find me at The Roca Says on Twitter and on Instagram there. And you can also follow the content I've got going on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/John Roca Says. And go and take a look at all the stuff we got going on there. Steve, having been a recent host on recent guest rather on Impolite Truths a couple times, it's been great to have him on. So you can see more of our stuff over there, or more of the stuff I do as well over there. All right, I'm talking too much. That's it. Just go over there if you want.
There's so much good stuff led by Don Roca.
Please.
I think that's it for this week. We will see you next week to finally conclude Godfather Part 1 on the Cine-Files.